After enrollment numbers showed a decline here at Eastern Illinois University last year or so, a committee was put together in order to determine the best strategy for retaining and attracting new students. There was a forum held recently this week, and coming up on At Issue, we'll talk to Dr. Blair Lord, the university's provost and vice president for academic affairs, about what was learned at the meeting and what the university plans to do next. Stay tuned. Enrollment issues are coming up on At Issue right now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for At Issue. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Over the past year, it's been said that Eastern Illinois University here in Charleston has been looking at some struggling enrollment numbers. In the wake of that realization, the university put together a committee that was deemed the Enrollment Management Advisory Committee. This committee's responsibility was to provide advice in regards to development, implementation, and evaluation of a strategic plan for enrollment. The committee has held meetings over the last year or so aimed at gathering information about enrollment and generating suggestions from the campus community about enrollment strategies. And with me now is EIU Provost Blair Lord. Dr. Blair Lord, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. And he knows a lot more about this than I do, of course, so that's of course why he's here. But first, can we talk about kind of the big picture as far as enrollment is concerned at Eastern Illinois University right now?
Yes, the enrollment spiked at Eastern Illinois University about 7 years ago. We actually had 12,350 students, give or take, one or two. And frankly, that was too large. Okay. And we systematically started to bring it back, the total enrollment back to a target range between about 11,600 and 11,800. Okay. So we had several years where we consciously chose to have slightly smaller entering classes.
Okay, is there a specific reason for that?
Well, it was to bring the enrollment down from its all-time peak and get it back into that range that really fits within our physical resources, our human resources, our financial resources.
Right. Okay.
So enrollment did in fact come down into that range after about 3 years, and we hovered in that range for the next 2 or 3 years. During that period of time, there was some declining high school enrollment cohorts coming toward us. Other institutions got very aggressive in trying to improve their enrollments, and our enrollment continued to decline after we really wanted to slow it down. So our new freshman classes have continued to decline now for 7 years in a row. The result is our total enrollment figure is now below the target range. We're about 10,200 right now.
Okay, so
that is lower than we want to be.
Right.
And so about 2 years ago, we decided we probably needed to get some external advice. And we actually sought a consultant that turned out to be Noel Levis Consulting, which is a firm that does this nationwide in terms of consulting for higher ed institutions. It took us a while to get them on site, but about 1.5 years ago, the consultants arrived and started meeting with us and giving us some advice. And fairly shortly thereafter, we actually implemented 2 committees. One was a Strategic Enrollment Planning Committee. There's a steering committee of that group and then a larger group. And we also implemented an operational group to start working immediately, because enrollment and recruitment has to continue all the time.
Right.
You can't just stop and say,
Ongoing
we'll wait
effort.
2 years and when we finish our planning process, we'll go back to it again.
Right.
So we actually had a working group and then we had a strategic planning group.
Okay.
The working group started implementing immediately some of the recommendations for the next cycle of our recruiting process, and a number of changes have happened as a result of that in financial aid, in marketing, in admissions, even in housing, and some of the other ancillary operations that help attract students.
Okay.
Strategic planning process is the more long-range one, and that is the one that has been ongoing, holding meetings for the last 6 to 9 months regularly, and having the consultant come back in periodically and provide advice and counsel on how to develop long-range strategies in addition to the shorter-term operational strategies.
Okay.
The forum that you mentioned this last Wednesday was in fact to share both the operational changes that had taken place for the recruitment cycle, as well as to share some of the strategic planning long-term initiatives and where we are likely to go. That process still hasn't finished for the total planning picture. But we spent a good deal of time. We had 6 people presenting using 40-odd slides in a PowerPoint, again, on both changes that had taken place operationally as well as the strategic objectives that we're looking ahead for.
Okay, and can you talk about some of those objectives and some of the things that kind of came from this forum? Because I know many people probably weren't able to attend, so.
Right. We talked, let me sort of go through it in sequence.
Sure.
We had several slides in a presentation by Dr. Mary Harrington Perry where she talked about the planning process itself, presented the 11 preliminary strategic objectives that had been shared at a previous forum 2 months ago. She shared the changes that are being proposed in those and have yet to be fully reviewed by the President's Council and the wider university, but those were shared. We then turned to a series of presentations by individuals, financial aid, marketing, web initiatives, data strategies, how we're mining the data, admission strategies, and then I gave a final wrap-up on where we stand with this coming year's fall enrollment, so that people could see actually where we stood. And actually, I might start with that. There's been a lot of concern. Are we going to be able to turn the decline in new freshmen, new transfer students around and have that start heading back up?
Right.
And we'll probably need several years of increasing enrollment before our total enrollment changes. For next year, we have a target. We would like to have new freshmen increase by 10% from last year's new freshman class. Currently, we backed up and said if we're going to have an increase of 10% in the students, we need some increase in the number of applications. We need some increase in the number of admits. We need some increase in deposits. At the moment, we're in the part of the cycle where we have met the target that we had for applications to get to the 10% increase. We met today the target for new admits, new freshman admits, and we're well ahead in deposits from a year ago. So I'm cautiously confident that we're going to meet our goal of 10% more new freshmen next year. Transfers is a more significant challenge for us. Transfer student applications at 11 of the 12 public university campuses in Illinois right now are behind last year, and Eastern is one of those. That suggests it'll be a challenge.
We're not the 12th guy.
We're not the 12th, no. The outlier is the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, as it often is. We are going to be challenged to get to 10% increase in new transfer students given that reality. We have implemented new scholarship programs, one of which is aimed at transfer students. So we are hoping that the yield on those we do admit will increase and that our transfer numbers will increase. Transfer population tends to develop later in the cycle, so there will be a lot of activity over the summer, whereas most of the new freshmen will be pretty much in the mix by by May 1st, which is when they're supposed to deposit.
Right. Okay.
So we will know the results of new freshmen sooner than we will transfers, but transfers are going to be more of a challenge.
Right. And you mentioned, implementing additional scholarships, for transfers, and I'm sure there's additional scholarships being worked on otherwise to attract students. Is that something that comes from rearranging funds that are already available, or is it seeking out additional funds?
No, it's basically reallocating within the university's budget to allow us to put more institutional resources into financial aid. We've actually instituted 3 new financial aid programs, one of which is the program for new transfer students. The other 2 others, one of which is the Commitment to Excellence, as we're calling it, which is a scholarship program for new freshmen. It's what they call a tiered merit scholarship program, so we're giving more to those students who have the highest academic profile and less as students get down into the mix. The last program is the so-called Panther Promise, which is really a tuition waiver program for students whose family income is basically lower middle class. The funding of all those programs is from within our existing budget, so we are having to do reallocations to do that. And it's not insignificant. It's 7 figures.
Right. Okay. So when you talk about, we're trying to get more students to come to Eastern freshmen and transfers like you just mentioned, are we having to change any of our admission standards for that?
No, we are not. In fact, the objective here, one of the longer range strategic objectives, is actually to improve the overall average profile of our entering class. And certainly putting more financial aid dollars that are merit-based into our financial aid pool is intended to make sure that we don't lower the class as we try to raise the numbers.
Okay.
That is a concern for people, but we are doing a number of things consciously to actually improve the class profile and not lower it. So no, we have not changed our admission standards. We do not intend to change our admission standards. We hope in the long run to have an improving class in terms of our overall admission profile.
Right. Okay. I just know that was something
Yeah.
one of the questions people had on their minds. So I thought since you were here, we'd ask. What are some of the more specific? You mentioned a couple things, but what are some of the more specific things we're doing besides increasing the freshman transfers and that kind of thing? Are there other things that we're doing that are specific to this right now?
Well, again, I rattled off several of the different people who made presentations at the forum.
Right.
Financial aid, in addition to putting more money into it, we've also changed some procedures. They've used some workflow analysis so that students that are in verification, which means after you fill out the information on your federal application, free student federal aid application,
FAFSA.
FAFSA, as they call it. If they have to provide additional backup to prove some of the evidence that's on that, it's called verification. And we've used workflows so that people in verification now can get both an estimated letter as well as when the verification is complete, they get an award package within 14 days.
Okay.
Previously it took 40 days.
Right.
So we've significantly improved the processing speed of those things. We have added the offering of the estimated award for students that are tied up in verification, so it isn't like they hear absolutely nothing about what they may be able to get by way of a financial aid package. So we've instituted that change as well, and a number of other smaller technical changes. That's just in the financial aid arena. In marketing, we've hired a new assistant vice president for integrative marketing, who's working very closely with admissions to develop a whole series of recruitment materials, including both print materials as well as a variety of electronic materials, and a communication flow pattern, so that we have a whole strategy of communications for new prospects. They haven't even applied yet, and carry them all the way through until they actually enroll and sit down in one of our classes. So the marketing has had a strategic plan, if you will, behind how we approach students and communicate with them throughout the process of recruitment and enrollment. So that was in the area of marketing. Related to that, we've had a significant improvement in our web presence. We have now a web portal which students go to and have all their interactions with the university through a single portal, regardless of whether it's paying a deposit, whether it's completing the application, whether it's finding out whether their aid has been packaged yet. It's all handled through the portal. And Ryan Gibson, our leader of our web team, has completely revamped that. And in fact, the design of the portal got a national award.
Wow,
Yeah, it was actually a gold award, a first place award in terms of the design of that web portal. So we've significantly changed our web presence, and we're using that to push out the communication flow very intentionally now. In the area of data mining, where we've developed processes now where we can track what we call the enrollment funnel, applications to admissions to deposits to students for each one of the admissions counselors for their territory, so that they know how they're doing against their own private targets.
So there's a set of evaluation there, so they have immediate feedback.
Statistical information that gives them a prompt feedback on how they're doing and how we're doing as a result. We're also mining the data to determine which ones of our programs are being effective. We've also developed ways to do some prediction. We learned, for example, that if a student puts Eastern as the #1 institution to have the data reported to from their FAFSA, they have a 71% chance of enrolling. So you can imagine where we're putting some effort to identify those students, and we spend some intentional time with them because our odds are better. So we're using data in ways like that, which we have not used in the past. So that using data relates to the admission strategies. We have a very intentional territory management system. Each counselor has a territory. They have a management process. They know what high schools they have in there, what community colleges, who they visited, who they talked to, how many applications they've gotten as a result of that, and so forth. So we're being very intentional in how we are structuring admissions and using our staff.
Sure, it sounds like everything's kind of tightening up a little bit.
Tightening up a lot, actually.
I can imagine. So what about housing? Are there housing incentives that we're working on at Eastern to try and bring students here?
Most of the housing incentives, frankly, have to do with trying to enhance the quality of life in the residence halls. And that's been a long long, multi-year process. You're probably aware of the number of the restroom facilities that have been gutted and redesigned to be less locker room-like and much more apartment-like or home-like in terms of that. New furnishings have been put in there. We actually have not had, the financial aid can be used toward housing, but we actually haven't had separate initiatives just focused on housing, other than to improve the quality of the housing experience. And of course, they also have done a lot of work with the dining halls to try to enhance the commodiousness of the dining halls and the quality of the food and the attractiveness of the food for students. So that's what Mark Hudson and his team has been focusing on.
Okay.
As our enrollment has declined, the number of students living in our residence halls have declined. So we would like enrollment to go up, not just because of students in the classroom, but because we'd have more students paying for residence halls.
Right, I was going to say, is that, I assume that's a money-making venture for the university, keeping students here, not to mention the quality of life experience.
Yeah, the residence hall operation is often called auxiliary operations, and they actually have to run on basically a break-even basis.
That was what I was wondering. Is it more like a, does it come out kind of the same?
It's run essentially as a business. And basically, we're running a giant hotel and restaurant business here on campus for all the students that reside here. And that does have to run on a break-even basis. The funding, complicated fund accounting processes, but the funding there goes into special funds, and it's used to pay for the services provided, and it has to pay for itself.
Okay.
State appropriated dollars and other tuition does not go into supporting that operation.
Okay. All right. So what about, kind of, can you talk about how we got here? Is there a specific reason for the enrollment decline? Is it felt statewide? Is it felt nationwide right now that you know of?
It's felt very much nationwide, as well as within the state. Various hypotheses have been offered, but the things that have a certain intuitive appeal are, of course, the economic conditions in general are making it difficult for families to afford to send people to college.
Right.
At the same time, because of declining state support to state institutions, we've had to raise tuition. So the cost has gone up. At the same time, the challenges of funding that cost for families has gone down. There's also been a decline in the state financial aid. So you have less aid to the universities, tuition going up, families challenged, less support for students available to them. So what we have seen is 3 years of decline in higher education enrollments nationwide, 3 years of decline in higher enrollments within the state of Illinois. We're also seeing declines in community college enrollments. In community colleges, for Eastern, we get approximately 40% of our new students from community colleges, or at least on transfer, most of whom are from community colleges. So as community colleges enrollments have started to decline, we have the challenge with transfer students.
Right, if there's less of them, they can't come here.
So it's expensive, people are challenged financially, there's less aid, therefore we're seeing fewer students in the pipeline generally.
Okay.
So as I say, last year, looking at fall enrollments in the state, we have 12 public campuses. 9 of those had enrollment declines, among them being Eastern.
Right.
There were 2 that were essentially level and 1 that actually had an increase, a noticeable increase. The way things have been trending this year, we will probably see a similar pattern next year across the state. Higher education is challenged in this state, certainly the public sector.
Okay. And is this something, that we are now having to compete with online schools? Has that become a problem over the last few years?
The level of competition, as I was rattling off the various challenges we've faced, I could have added the level of competition because not only do we compete with our traditional competitors, Eastern competes with the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, it competes with Illinois State, competes with the other four-year publics, competes with private institutions. We compete to a degree with community colleges for students who would come here as freshmen and sophomores, but those have always been our competitors. What's new is the number of proprietary and independent institutions, both who've come into this state and set up actually physical locations, as well as the number of online providers of higher education, and those are growing rapidly with things like the MOOCs, massive online open access courses that are offered for free. At the moment, you don't get credit for those on a college transcript, but the likelihood is that'll happen soon enough. There are low-cost providers of general education courses. Again, those don't go onto a transcript and count yet, but they will. And there are, of course, plenty of online providers who do offer for-credit transfer courses that will transfer to Eastern or other publics. Within the state now, just within the state, there are 181 higher education institutions. That's a significant increase in the number, say, a decade ago. So we're all competing, and that doesn't even count the online providers.
Right, right. So is there any increased efforts then, you know, to reach outside of the state? Or is there anything working with that kind of thing?
Eastern has made several initiatives to reach out beyond our borders. We attract approximately 97%, 98% of our students are in-state students, Illinois residents.
Right.
We've always had a few from out of state. We were pretty close to the Indiana border, sitting here in Charleston. 2-3 years ago, I guess it was, we actually changed our tuition policy so students at the undergraduate level from what I call contiguous states that we touch, can get in-state tuition automatically, rather than the out-of-state rate, which was 3 times the in-state rate. We changed 3 years ago to allow any undergraduate that meets the honors criteria, ACT, 26, and class rank, and so forth, anyone that meets an honors eligibility criteria anywhere in the universe to get in-state tuition. There are discussions both at Eastern, at other Illinois institutions, and then out-of-state institutions of changing this tuition structure for students from other states. My prediction, this is just Blair Lord's prediction, 5 to 10 years from now, public institutions will just charge tuition. There won't be a separation.
You go wherever you want, you'll just charge the
well,
tuition
it may
for
be
that
different
school.
for an Illinois institution and for an Indiana institution, but Illinois will just charge an Illinois state tuition rate. And Indiana will probably just charge an Indiana rate for their institution, whatever that happens to be. You won't differentiate between whether you're coming from within the state, contiguously to the state, beyond the contiguous states, from another country. It'll just be a tuition charge. That's my prediction.
All right, well, I guess we'll get to see if that comes true years down the road, the Blair Lord prediction.
Right.
Are there challenges also right now to diversify the student body? Has that become a challenge to the university?
When I arrived here 12 years ago, the minority population at Eastern was, within the student body, was approximately half what it is now. It was about 12%. Now we're getting at 25, 26%. At that time, there was a good deal of pressure, both from the state public policy perspective, as well as internally, to increase the diversity of our student body. In the intervening years, not only have we been reasonably successful at doing that, we consciously reached out and tried to bring students from diverse backgrounds to campus during the recruitment phase to attract them to want to come to Eastern. We were successful in doing some of that. There's also been a change in the demographics of the college-bound population nationwide. If we look at our sibling institutions, as I call them in the state of Illinois, Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville is approximately 25% minority and international students, small segment. Western is at 28%. Northern is at 36%. So all of the institutions with whom we sort of share a common cohort of student or potential students are seeing a change in the makeup of their student body. What we haven't seen, and will probably be the next change that we will have to navigate, will be the Hispanic Latino population. We do not have a large segment of those within our minority groups on campus. That is a growing segment of the Illinois population, and they will be coming to higher education in larger and larger numbers, and Eastern will need to be responsive to that.
Okay, and as we close here, we have a couple minutes left, but what's next as far as EIU enrollment management goes? What are we doing right now?
What's next, frankly, is to finish the strategic enrollment planning initiative, have common understanding of what the overarching goals are going to be. There will probably be 6 or 7 of them. There will be specific implementation plans for each one of those goals written down, agreed upon with individual persons or units responsible for implementing them and moving forward to achieve that. Longer run, we're going to have to continue to find a way to be responsive to the changing environment of higher education, which probably everyone recognizes will happen, and none of us have a really clear crystal ball as to what it's going to look like.
Sure. Okay. Well, you know, we really appreciate you coming on At Issue today and talking about the EIU enrollment that's going on, and wish you luck in the coming years with that.
Thanks.
So,
thank you, Kate.
thank you very much. And if you have an idea for At Issue or questions for our experts coming up, check out the topics online and then let us know about it. You can email us at weiu.net. So we thank you for joining us here at Issue, and we hope to see you next time.